NC State is quietly having one of the best off seasons in all of college football, and they are set up to thrive in the ACC. If you want to talk about a dark horse contender in the ACC in 2024, I'm going to suggest you examine the North Carolina State Wolfpack under Dave Doeren, a guy who is not going to be coaching for the first time this year. He's going to have a veteran quarterback as well. But let's just look at things from the outset before we dive into the nitty-gritty, into the details there. Do you know who has brought in the 11th best transfer portal class in all of college football? Surprise, surprise. It's North Carolina. They've got a top 30 high school recruiting class as well with some pretty highly rated blue chip prospects. So Dave Doeren has never won 10 or more games as North Carolina State's head coach, which is amazing because he's won a lot of football games. He's built a very high floor but somewhat low ceiling program. And they remind me a lot of Utah. Utah, for many, many years under Kyle Whittingham, they went about their business. They weren't flashy. They just showed up, did the work, won games, but they weren't getting to that next level. And then eventually they got there. And you know how they got there? They elevated the quarterback position. There have been some good quarterbacks to suit up for the Wolfpack over the years, but do you know who they have coming in? Do you know the name Grayson McCall? I do. You may as well. He's played for the Chanticleers, alma mater of Dustin Johnson, a two-time major champion, and a World Series or College World Series national champions back in, I want to say 2016, in that sort of timeline there. That's where Grayson McCall has been playing college football for the past, not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 football seasons. Past 5. This is year 6. So you give me a coach that has been in his position winning a lot of football games for over a decade. You give me a 6th-year quarterback who in his last 4 seasons as a starter has not completed less than 67% of his throws playing for Coastal Carolina. You give me a top 12 transfer portal class that includes 10 players from Power 4 schools. You may be wondering, well, what about the other side of the portal? Who left North Carolina State? I'll tell you who. 20 players. You may hear that number and think, well, that's not going to go well. That's going to be But here's what you need to pay attention to. Where are those players actually ending up? Of the 20 transfer portal departures, just 5. Just 5 are going to play at Power 4 schools next year. So you lost 5 Power 4 caliber starters and you brought in 10. One of whom, and by the way, that's not counting Grayson McCall. That's just looking at players that came from a certain caliber of school. So you've got a team that went 9-4 last year, lost their bowl game to Kansas State, or they would have had that first 10-win season. That's happened a couple times for the Wolfpack under Dave Doeren. So you may look at that track record and say, I don't know about 9 regular season wins. Can they really do it? That would be replicating what they did in last year's regular season, by the way, which is go 9-3. You look at the ACC and you think Florida State, as you should. They should be the favorites. They've probably got the best roster. Miami with Cam Ward has got a great offensive line. They're upgrading at quarterback with Cam Ward back there. They're going to be able, I would think, with Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal, their offensive line coach, to run the football. That's what their track record has always shown. They're going to have one of the most talented rosters. Who's third? Who's third in the ACC? You can go a lot of different directions. The answer may very well be NC State. Quietly, very quietly, they won 9 games. And very quietly, they've brought in a great transfer portal and high school recruiting class. They were 6-2 in the ACC last season with wins over Miami and Clemson. And then you look at NC State's schedule and you go, wait a minute, their win total is what now? It's 8.5. Holy smokes. Holy Toledo. Holy Wolfpack and other broadcaster expressions. Give me the over 8.5 for North Carolina State. So they begin on a Thursday. That's August 29th with Western Carolina. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they win that game. then it gets interesting. It gets interesting fast. And if NC State wants to establish themselves not just as a dark horse ACC contender, but as a college football playoff contender, because remember, we've got 12 teams to put in the playoff this year. How about their week 2 game? This will be one of the most underrated, overlooked non-conference battles in week 2 of the college football slate. A lot of great games out there. But are you thinking about Tennessee and North Carolina State playing in a neutral site game at the Duke's Mayo Classic, Bank of America Stadium? Now, this is a neutral site game in the same way that when Georgia plays in Atlanta, it's a neutral site game. That game is in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the crowd will lean towards the Wolfpack there, though I don't doubt the Vols' ability to go all the way out east. And it's really not that far for them. So that's a huge game. Huge game. Then you play Louisiana Tech before Clemson is played on the road. That's the ACC opener. Again, a team that they beat last year, who everyone has legitimate questions about with their coaching staff and their refusal to use the transfer portal. And NC State doesn't have that issue. They're not just relying on high school kids to grow. That's what Clemson's doing. Fascinating experiments. You've got the returning head coach, quarterback, and offensive coordinator. But is Clemson still Clemson? I've seen NC State beat him before. They did it last year. They'll have to do it on the road. That's tougher, no doubt. The next 2 games, get a load of this, Northern Illinois and then Wake Forest. So in their first 6 games, in their first 6 games, I am seeing a minimum of 4 wins, and I don't see how it's not 5. Between Tennessee, that's starting a quarterback who's only played in a bowl game, Nico Iamaleava, very talented, but that'll be his 3rd college football game as a starter, and going to Clemson, that's felt like a program that doesn't quite have its full identity and, lost to a Duke team last year early in the season. They could certainly lose, even at home to North Carolina State. What exactly about that first half of the season doesn't scream 5-1? So you may be wondering, Spence, what about the back half of the schedule? Certainly things start to get tougher. Nope. Nope, I'm telling you, this is a manageable schedule for Dave Doeren and company. You've got Syracuse at home. That's going to be led by Kyle McCord, by the way. They've got a new head coach, and Kyle McCord, a guy who was like this close. I mean, literally 1 drive away from playing for a Big Ten title and likely a college football playoff. He's at Syracuse now. They're going to travel all the way to Raleigh. And then the first cross-country trip with this new ACC schedule in which you'll play at Cal. That's a long trip to go to Berkeley. Then host Stanford the next week. Stanford's win total is 3.5. I think that's a little bit low. I think that's a little bit low, but is that a winnable game for NC State? Yeah, you're probably going to have the more talented roster in that game. You're going to have the best quarterback, probably the better roster, and the more experienced coach. Interesting. So between Syracuse, Cal, and Stanford, 2 of which are at home, who's seeing less than 2 wins there? Suddenly we're up to 6. We're up to maybe 7 wins at that point with 3 games to go. Then they host Duke, first-year head coach Malik Cunningham in at quarterback, the transfer from Texas because the carousel works in that sort of way. Then a bye, a late season bye to set up 2 road games to end the season. Not ideal, but the opponents they're playing, I've seen tougher. At Georgia Tech, at North Carolina. North Carolina without Drake May, that is what I call a pullback team. Georgia Tech, low floor, low ceiling sort of team. Bowl game, they were in a bowl game last year. But do you think Georgia Tech can think powerhouse? I mean, find me the 3 losses in here. Let's say the worst comes to pass. They start 4-2 in their first 6, and you play Tennessee and Clemson. Who's giving them their second loss on the back half of their schedule? This could be a great year for NC State. They've had a great offseason, love the quarterback move, returning coach, had a good year in 2023. I think NC State could have their first 10-win season under Dave Doeren this year, and they are a sneaky team that you best not ignore in the ACC and maybe even for the college football playoff. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.